There is a sentence living quietly beneath your life. You do not say it out loud. You may not even consciously think it. But it directs you. It colors your ambition. It infects your spirituality. It shapes your relationships. The sentence is this: something is wrong with me. Not wrong in behavior, wrong in essence, wrong at the root. You may call it sin. You may call it trauma. You may call it conditioning. You may call it ego. The vocabulary changes. The accusation remains. And if this accusation is false, then the entire structure of your self-understanding has been built on distortion. That is not a small claim. So we must move carefully. Because if the foundation is wrong, every improvement built on top of it will tremble. Before you ever examined yourself, a narrative was handed to you. Human beings, you were told, implicitly or explicitly, are dangerous creatures. Selfish at the core, violent beneath civility, driven by appetite, corruptible, morally unstable. Different myths, the same suspicion. The metaphysical framework is less important than the psychological consequence. And the consequence is this: you learned to distrust your own interior. You learned that what arises naturally within you must be filtered, suppressed, managed. Desire, suspicious. Anger, dangerous. Ambition, questionable. Sexuality, compromised. Doubt, weakness. You became a curator of your own impulses, a warden inside your own nervous system. And over time, the inner accusation solidified. If I were truly good, I would not feel this. Notice how quietly that thought governs behavior. Every natural movement becomes evidence. Evidence of a flaw you never directly examined. The moment you label part of your experience as fundamentally wrong, you divide yourself. There is now the acceptable self and the unacceptable self, the spiritual self and the shadow self. You begin performing goodness, editing your humanity, presenting curated fragments. What does not fit the image is pushed downward. And what is exiled does not disappear. It becomes subterranean. Subterranean forces do not remain gentle. The shadow is not evil. It is disowned energy. It is life that you could not safely express, anger you were punished for, the grief you were told was weakness, the curiosity that threatened authority, the sexuality that embarrassed somebody, the confidence that made others uncomfortable. This is not moral failure. It is adaptation. But adaptation hardens into identity. Soon you are no longer choosing goodness. You are protecting an image. And the more fragile the image, the harsher the suppression. Suppression requires tension. Tension requires energy. Blocked energy distorts. The anger you refuse becomes passive aggression. The envy you deny becomes resentment. The desire you shame becomes compulsion. The fear you suppress becomes control. And when these distortions surface, you say, "See, I knew something was wrong with me." But what you are witnessing is not corruption. It is fragmentation. Fragmentation looks like contradiction. It looks like preaching compassion while privately resenting someone. It looks like pursuing enlightenment while fearing insignificance. This is not proof of evil. It is proof of division. A thought appears. Dark, aggressive, jealous, fearful, and instantly, without examination, you identify with it. You say, "This is me." Not, "This is a movement in the mind." You collapse awareness into content. You confuse the sky with the storm. Then you judge the sky for producing weather. But awareness is not the impulse. Awareness is the field in which impulse appears. Yet you have treated every mental event as confession. This is inner violence. You are prosecuting yourself for thoughts you did not consciously construct. And because you mistake weather for identity, you conclude the sky is broken. What is denied internally is projected externally. The aggression you will not own becomes their aggression. The ignorance you deny becomes their ignorance. The corruption you suppress becomes their corruption. Now the shadow has an enemy. Enemies are convenient. They give direction. They give justification. They give moral superiority. Projection does not eliminate shadow. It weaponizes it. The inner war becomes outer war. There is a more refined distortion. I am not the ego. I am pure awareness. I am light. There is truth here, but truth misapplied becomes escape. If transcendence is used to avoid integration, you split humanity from spirituality. You identify as the aware one. Subtle superiority creeps in. Dismissal replaces integration. This is ego inflation in spiritual form. Evolution without grounding fractures just as deeply. The shadow does not appear because you speak non-duality. It merely waits. If you are not inherently evil, then your darkness is not corruption. It is unintegrated energy. Anger is boundary not honored. Greed is fear not soothed. Envy is longing not admitted. Lust is vitality without guidance. Pride is protection without security. Seen this way, nothing inside you is demonic. Everything is information. And this interpretation is destabilizing. Because if nothing inside you is fundamentally rotten, you are responsible for integration. Shame is easier. Shame gives structure. Wholeness gives responsibility. Integration does not mean indulgence. It means understanding root. What is this energy protecting? What boundary was crossed? What need was ignored? When anger is listened to, it becomes clarity. When fear is examined, it becomes discernment. When desire is understood, it becomes direction. When pride matures, it becomes dignity. Nothing is amputated. Everything is metabolized. Dissolve the false identity. Coagulate the integrated self. There may come a moment, quiet and destabilizing, when you observe a dark thought without collapsing into it. You do not justify it. You do not condemn it. You simply see it. And in that seeing, something shifts. Not because you suppressed it. Not because you acted it out. But because it was no longer exiled. Awareness metabolizes what shame intensifies. You do not conquer yourself. You reconcile yourself. There is no pure self hidden beneath contamination. There is depth, history, conditioning, adaptation, and awareness holding it all. You are not a moral defect trying to purify yourself into worthiness. You are awareness learning to hold its own complexity. Fragmentation can be reconciled. The myth says, you are corrupt. Strive to overcome yourself. Integration says, you are fragmented. Strive to understand yourself. The first breeds inner war. The second breeds coherence. You do not awaken by amputating the dark. You awaken by seeing what you condemned was part of the architecture. Misplaced, distorted, unheard, but never inherently evil. You are not broken. You are unfinished. Unfinished is not a defect. It is motion. Now, the real question is not whether evil exists. It is whether you will continue dividing yourself in its name. Because perception changes behavior. If it does not, perception was incomplete. Insight without embodiment is self-deception. You now have enough clarity to move differently. And you do not need to become someone new to do so. You only need to stop pretending you have not seen. What you do next is yours. It always has been.